understanding of European cohesion shall emerge. I will cut things short because we are a little bit late already, but before I introduce the speakers, let me just say how you, our invisible audience, can communicate with us. We will stop our discussion every 20 minutes or so, maybe a little shorter now for Q&As. And those of you who are watching on Zoom can send their questions to the speakers using the Q&A box. And those of you who are watching the live stream can type their questions in the chat, and the forum team will pass them on to me. Let me now quickly introduce the panelists. I start with, well, from my Leo Swinkels. Leo Swinkels is the former dean of the Maastricht Theatre Academy and president of PLETA, platform of 9 European theatre academies that has been founded with the aim of creating new experiences for students when working together as young theatre professionals in Europe. So they form a strong community of practice. Welcome, Leo.
Thank you, Regina.
Beata Chuchinskaya is theatrologist and cultural manager. And since 2005, she has been the Academy Chancellor in charge of organizational and economic matters at Alexander Salwerowicz National Academy of Dramatic Art in Warsaw, Poland. She has managed numerous international projects and festivals at her university. Thank you very much for joining us, Beata.
Thank you, Regina.
Mati Gaspar, last but not least, cultural manager and university lecturer at the University of Theatre and Film Art, Budapest, Hungary, head of art theory department and senator, and all this formally, we must add here, because Mate just resigned from all his functions. Reason is the forced transformation of the university from a public institution to a private foundation, as decreed by the Hungarian government. And Mate still supports the ongoing student strike for academic autonomy and freedom of the arts, and we shall certainly hear more about this during our panel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mate. I'm a dramaturg, and I'm teaching acting students at the University of Music, Theatre and Media in Hanover. And here I also represent a little bit as the General Secretary of the EUTSA, this network of 18 international theatre schools and academies. We were asked to join the forum not to present our association, but to use the network to provide expert knowledge for the future challenges in higher education of theatre and performing arts. Now, dear panelists, we agreed to start with a personal round, and I would like to ask you, why did you start international cooperation in higher theatre and performing arts education in the first place? Please try to stay short and concise. And please, Leo, can I ask you to start?
Yes, it's a pleasure to start. When I came to Maastricht to become the Dean of the Maastricht Theatre Academy for more than 20 years, it was quite obvious for me that we should look around. And if you look around in the city of Maastricht, you look to the neighbors, which are other countries and other cultures, familiar, but others, like Belgium with the Flemish and French culture, and like Germany. So that was quite obvious. This theatre academy in Maastricht had to look out and reach out to his neighbors. One of my guest teachers and good friend and advisor was at that time and still is Johan Simons. Johan is an alumnus of the Maastricht Academy, but he started his, at that time, I'm talking about the 90s, his international career, especially in the German-speaking areas. And together with Arthur Zonnen, who was at the time director of the Dutch International Theatre Festival, they created this idea of making of a theatre academy also an international meeting point. So we started international conferences, and that was on exchange and meeting. And after that, we started the first bilateral cooperation, co-productions with theatre academies in the UK, in Germany, and even in Russia, St. Petersburg, on a temporary basis, on a project basis. It was bilateral, and it was very interesting, and it tasted to do more like that, because students had a big benefit of it. And so we try to make it more structural and not on a project basis with even more partners. And then arose this idea of a platform of European theatre academies, PLETA. Altogether we are 8 partners to create multilateral cooperation and co-production, because we do believe, and the first results are very interesting about that this kind of working together gives the biggest results in skills, in competences, and especially in multicultural, multilingual possibilities for our young theatre makers, which is the basis for theatre in the future. Maybe we could have a short view, Regina, on one of the projects, a very short video, about a project with refugees, about the refugee team. That we made in 2016 with all our PLETA partners.
Juna, could you be so kind to start the Odyssey clip? Yes, thanks.
It's just like this open things that you can, when you know it's about refugees, when you know it's about the Odyssey, you have enough room to build your own story, I think, and that's a cool thing about it.
We moesten op een of andere manier iets verzinnen, waardoor alle scholen iedere keer bij elk project betrokken waren.
It's also in this project, the audience are the fugitives. So they come and see all the isles. And of course they don't understand you, as all fugitives come on the Greek shore. Do you think they speak Greek? Nobody does, but they do understand each other.
Okay, any questions? No questions? Okay, we hand out the programs and then
Give me the programs.
have a great week. Have a great week.
Let's form 2 lines on both sides of the rope.
During our performance, you, the member of the audience, shall be addressed as Odysseus.
I'm Jacob, studying in Munich.
Ik ben Tim, ik ben een van de studenten van het RITS.
My name is Isabel and I'm from Norway, Oslo.
This festival life is so hectic.
This is really interesting. Never done this kind of stuff. Never. So.
Like a piece of curious theater, if I may refer to Goran's wonderful speech. People just meeting, not knowing what will be the outcome of what they are going to create together or to communicate in the first place. Thank you very much. I would like to pass on to Beata. What was your reason to start with international collaboration?
Thank you, Regina. Welcome, everyone. I'm really honored to be here at this forum. So if this is about personal approach, it will be about personal approach. I'm from Poland, so I was born and raised in a communist country, and everything, the beginning and everything is on this axis, the Western and Eastern Europe. Poland joined European Union in 2004, and it was more or less the same time when I went to Brussels first time. I was a representative of the inter-artist thematic network into the frameworks of Socrates program. And my academy was an institutional coordinator of this thematic network. And that was the meeting full of contrast. First, I was the only person representing the thematic network from the former communistic country, and probably the first Polish citizen in this group. I was young, 28 years old lady, in front of a noble middle-aged man, mostly professors. All of them represented serious sciences or humanities, and I was representing arts. To be honest, there was one music thematic network, but still that was a huge confrontation, and that was the lesson. But that was also the meeting when I first time saw how the culture politics are made, and that the words are followed by real activities, and that there are real possibilities to cause the change. People there in European Union offices were really helpful and friendly. In the meantime, I have visited Brussels many times, as we still don't have euro, so Western countries are still relatively expensive to us. And I was looking for the cheapest hotels and walking the city on my foot with a small suitcase. And I was surprised that not every salesman in a shop and not every waiter is nice to me. And I was thinking, what am I doing wrong? And my Dutch friend explained me that lots of Brussels citizens do not accept us, EU visitors, with those small suitcases. And I saw this scratch. And maybe I could read about it somewhere in newspaper, but I felt it. And I understood that this feeling is one of the most elements of understanding the processes of European processes. And this is the first reason I'm working on this. I think the feeling is very important. During my work, I was also traveling a lot for different festivals, and I was visiting ITS Festival in Amsterdam or ACT Festival in Bilbao. I was in Sarajevo, in Rome, and I remember that at the very beginning, I rejected the art presented by young artists on the festivals, in the Western festivals, this Western performing arts, let's say, and it took me some years to understand that this is not a bad art. This is just another language. This is another sensitivity. This is another culture context and another audience. And I remember long talks with our students who at the very beginning also had this problem with the reception of this artistic language of their friends from the West, let's say, in general. So that's the other reason. The experiencing of different cultural contexts really have this experience. I think today is even more important than it was before, because we are convinced that we know something about other cultures, because the internet, social media, movies, TV series, which say everything, but it's smoking. And I think if we really want to understand each other, we really need to experience each other. And this is the third element I would like to say. During the ITS Festival, which Alexander Zelwerowicz State Theatre Academy organizes since 2002. Once edition, we invited two groups, one from Israel and the second from Iran. And we are really afraid how to deal with those groups, not to cause any accident by chance between those groups, because they were, of course, in conflict. And a tradition of our festival is that one day all the representatives of all the schools are sitting at the round table and talking one to another about the school's methodologies, artistic challenges. So we also arranged such meeting with all the representatives, and the representatives from Iran and Israel, they sat face to face at the same table and said to us that they were really happy to be there as a human to human, talk with each other, just a normal, just without any political conflict or whatever. The conflict was all above their heads. And that was so touching and convinced me that all the efforts you make to organize this meeting between people is that work. So this is my personal, very personal approach. And that's why I'm working on developing international cooperations for my students.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Beata. That's what festivals can do. We might later on speak about what is not be able to be managed by festivals alone, but we have to take other efforts. Now I switch to Mate, please, to your personal statement.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Actually, my experience is quite close to Beata's, since I'm also coming from a Central Eastern European country, Hungary, where I was born and where I live. I was privileged, although, to start my professional career at the turn of the century as the managing director of a young independent theater company called Cocreate, which was led by Arpad Schilling. And we had a fantastic period of some 10 years where we could develop and nurture a fantastic international network of co-producers and presenters, and therefore we had the chance to travel all around Europe and even beyond, which not only allowed to us to develop an operational model which was unique at that time in Hungary, and which led me to the university, to the academic world to reflect on and teach about, but also opened a fully different perspective for us as young theater makers and later on thinkers on those very important issues of international cooperations, what can work and how. And of course, it's useless to tell you that some 20 years ago, the situation was completely different. And when you came from a post-communist country, this was something really inspiring and interesting for Western partners. Therefore, the models, the cooperation models, worked on a very different pattern than it is now, meaning that we were still considered as artists, professionals coming from the so-called margins. So we should be somehow integrated or reintegrated in our common European culture, and for that purpose, many very generous and forward-looking programs were also initiated and maintained by the Western bodies and organizations, which also somehow raised the question whether how much we are dependent on that kind of cooperation scheme. And very early on, it was a big topic for us, how to get to an equal level and how to create real partnerships based on mutual understanding and exchange and real share of resources and experiences. It was well, as long as it was a professional choir in the professional debate, I think it was very healthy. But when it moved also to the political level, which after the joining of the European Union at the same time, 2004, and more explicitly after the coming to the power of the new Orban regime after 2010, this position was even somehow at the political level and the cultural policy level also counterbalanced. And now these countries in the former East or former Central East behave and claim as a sort of superiority, who are best positioned to know what true European and true national-based European Christian culture is about, and tries to preach about it and make lessons to Western countries which are now considered as declining and losing their paths. So it's very, very frightening and also very insightful to look at all those major moves and it's when it comes to culture, it's we are really touching the heart of it. And of course, it very much relates to the possibilities of cooperations and international exchanges. My experience as a university teacher, which dates now almost 15 years back, that despite of all these programs and European reunification, students in local schools remain quite closed and quite cut off the meaningful and really mind-changing European cooperation. So there is a lot to do, and this was also one of my priorities as a university staff member, to open up new ways of cooperations, and as in Beata's case, also a festival experience went into that direction that we've been running. But I think that first of all, for any kind of meaningful cooperation to happen, there is a real precondition, and is it really to be on the same platform. So when it comes to educational institutions, when it comes to universities, and when we are exploring what kind of cooperation scheme can be set up, the top precondition is to be placed on the same basic value set, and be not only instinctively but outspokenly also agree on some basic values, like the autonomy of those universities who are supposed to cooperate. And this autonomy is also related both at the academic, both at the organizational, and also at the political level. And therefore, the current situation in Budapest is on the one hand highly problematic, and on the other hand very much full of lessons for the European family of artists and academics, because the very basics of these values are seriously attacked by the government, and are fiercely defended by the students. So just a little illustration on that, a short clip that Juna, you can launch, and maybe I will just explain while you are watching this very short clip to explain what is it about. It's from a can you hear me, or just the music? Okay, so it happened 2 months ago. It was early September, when the carta that we wrote with all the university values, this piece of paper, was transmitted hand by hand from the university's building until the parliament. And it was a huge festival, sort of improvised feast throughout the streets of Budapest with tens of...
I think you have to explain later. Too loud for my feeling. Moment, just let the clip go and then explain it nicely.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you, but it would have been you can do either watch the video or
sure.
the explanation.
Okay,
so maybe you just tell us what we saw.
So what you could see, that this carta with the description of the autonomy of the university, or of the universitas in general, and these claims and this basic value set was transmitted from one hand to the other throughout the streets of Budapest, from the university's building until the parliament building, and tens of thousands of people joined this improvised public feast, and help students to make it very performative what they mean by autonomy, what they mean by defending the universal values that should be European and which are currently under serious attacks. This recording is from early September, and many things happened yet, and unfortunately not in the good direction. But we can talk about it later. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe we can talk about this later. Thank you very much. I have got, normally I would stop now for some Q&As, but we haven't got any yet. I suppose everybody is just following your very thrilling descriptions of your personal reasons, which I can very much understand and underline. I mean, we are like more or less 2 generations sitting here, being socialized, like Leo and me, in the last decades of the 20th century. You know, where this overwhelming feeling of opening up, international cooperation, culture as one of the major means of transport, of sort of an exchange about cultural identity, and this word has gotten a strange taste by now. This is why I wanted to. I'm using that. I wanted to say that I personally very much like a shift of terms the French philosopher François Jullien proposes, because he says we should not use the word cultural identity anymore, because it gets the notion of nationalistic thought, and it goes into an area we do not want to find ourselves again, just as it is happening now outspokenly in Budapest. It's almost a folkish idea behind it. And he said, let's replace it by the term cultural resource. It's a little technical, but what it means, and this is important for the students, I believe, that a cultural resource is just what you have and can bring with you as material into each encounter and each its exchange. It's not your identity, it's not your national identity, it's just your luggage, your cultural luggage you can take with you. And he also said, let's not use the term cultural difference anymore. We worked with these terms very much, but now we should not use them anymore, and rather say just say distance. We're separated by distance and not by difference. So also this again is just a geographical gap you can overcome when you travel and meet other people, and full stop to this. So I would really like to ask you, starting with this, what do you think are the challenges we meet now and we face now if we want to establish a European basis for social dimensions in our métier, in the arts, and why does this have to start in education, from your experiences? Yes, Leo, please. You have to unmute yourself, Leo. You have to unmute yourself.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
In addition to this idea of resources, we had in the Plata platform this concept of treasures. Every academy, Beata has a very good example for that because of her Grotowski heritage and workshops. Nearly every academy has its own treasures, which is very beautiful to share, because then you can share experiences and more or less tacit knowledge to other academies without restricting yourself to this treasure as something like your own identity, which is the most beautiful that there is in the world. And so it gives lots of opportunities for co-creating between universities and academies to share those treasures. So you have a good look at your own more or less cultural tradition, and in the same time you make it as a very positive starting point for exchange and co-creating. Besides that, we have to to understand that our national heritage are very young, because our national states are not existing longer than a couple of ages. And before that, it was quite another situation, even in Europe, with a lot of integration processes and moving processes during all the ages we have been. So there's much more we have in common than we should different from each other. I think that's a more historical view, but I think we shouldn't forget that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Leo. But what about the others? Yes, Beata, about the challenges we meet today?
I would like to make one step back to what you said, Regina, about those two generations. And from my point of view, and I think Martin may say the same, that as we were born in closed countries and we were raised in closed countries, and then the countries opened so wide, and we could experience this openness and develop some tools to make cooperation. And now we are witnessing a kind of closing again, borders, mental borders, and even physical borders because of the pandemic, but not only. The pandemic is not the only reason of this closure. So I think that this is the process. I really feel a lot of regret in myself that we are going to close our countries again and our minds again. And about what Leo said about what are the perspectives now and what shall we do? I think that this Pleta project, which was really focused on sharing the resources of the academies, was really worth. And we can show, for example, if Juna, may you show this Grotowski workshop that was clip 2, maybe for a moment?
Yes, we can. We have the time. No, Juna is looking for the, yeah, thank you.
We have been walking silently hours in the forest together. Just walking and just be in your own time and own rhythm, just passing the space, and we could be really the part of the nature. Simplicity without any big philosophy, just to open your mind and be here and now.
Okay, do the trial.
The tempo of everything is 2-3 times quicker, stronger. Everything is running and rushing. We are thinking that the tools we have will be helpful to have more time for ourselves. But the tools we have, they are taking our time that we can take about ourselves. I think that instinct of the human being is enough strong that the people know there is kind of very dangerous process of losing completely contact with the real life. Young people now, they more and more, they are in the virtual reality. And very often happens that young people, they feel lost in the real reality, in the real life. They absolutely prefer to be there because they could control, and they are lost here.
Check your construction. Massage your ears. In your neck. Feel the skin. Feel the shoulder blades, how they work.
use the theater like the place for self-development, like the place that they will recognize for what the life is. It's not for make the fantastic big show. The theater for me is the place that you should know what it means human being.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Beata, for sharing this. This was a Grotowski workshop you gave in Warsaw, and there were international students joining in, getting to know the method of, one of the methods of Grotowski, right?
Yeah, that was the workshop. It was not in Warsaw, we organized it, but it was in Brzezinka near Wrocław. That was the origin place where Grotowski was working. What is interesting about this workshop, that the students were there in a group of more or less 24 persons, I think. They had to care about everything. They had to care about their water, their food, cleaning the venue and everything. And even if they had the problem with the energy, they had to go through the field and just solve the problem. So it was a real experiencing the life. But what I would like to stress is what Tomasz Rodowicz said in this movie, that what our challenge now is to find for the students a place for self-development. Using all those resources we have and dealing with all those resources we have as the academies and the cultures.
Mm-hmm. You said thank you. You said when we first spoke, all other. I mean, we're speaking of higher education and of universities, which is strange enough that art should be taught at universities, but it's good. And you said, Beata, I remember very well, all other sciences have included the necessity to think about what you're doing, to reflect what you're doing. Whereas people who are doing performing arts always act. They're always doing, and the curricula give very, very little room for this, what in a certain extreme you are doing in this Grotowski workshop, philosophy. And I also reflect back to what Goran said this morning. This really also is, again, an anti-Cartesian measure of doing theater together and experiencing each other. So, like, we are in the middle of the topic now, because all this international exchange is something which is more and more done on festivals. There are a lot of possibilities to do co-productions. Many of them are fostered by EU programs you can apply for. But our issue is, why should we start with students at the university? And what can we do? What can we do in our universities to make this happen more? Because if we wait for the students to go out into whatever, theater, film, whatever they are doing, it's sometimes too late to even make this experience, because you're on the market and you have to run. Now we have a very elaborate system of trainings in Europe, and in every theater school I meet, sort of more or less outspoken, the conviction: our education is the best, our program to train artists is the best, we have the best method for whatever kind of theater. And this is not exactly a spirit that's fostering international collaboration between the institutions themselves. I mean, Erasmus is fine, you can go and have your experience, but we're talking about something different here, aren't we? Who wants to? Yeah, Leo, please.
Yes, I think that's a very important aspect of co-creation. You have to open up to the other universities, academies, and that starts with at least being very curious about what the others are doing and how they do it, and to be as open as possible to discover values they can provide for your own students. And so you have to leave the comfort zone as a dean or as professors at your academy, that what you are doing is the best for your students. So you have to come out of your own comfort zone, which is not that easy as it sounds, because we all, I do think we all in the academies have a very strong engagement with our students and really try to make the best program we can. So we really do believe in the values of our program. So to step a little bit aside of your own beliefs is not that easy as it sounds, but you have to do that to create space for real co-creation and interaction with other point of views, with other forms of training. And even we have to leave the comfort zone that what the professors, the teachers are proposing is the best way and gives the best results. We have even to open up to give the space to the students themselves to create in a more autonomous way than we are used to, I think, in our educational programs. So in my opinion, the learning outcomes of our programs are for more than 50% in the hands of the students themselves and what they learn from each other in a kind of peer group learning. And we should create the circumstances that they can benefit of that approach, and even more that they can benefit if they go out their comfort zone themselves, if they go step into such kind of international co-creating groups, because they become a creative community themselves at that moment. So that is not as easy as it sounds. It will take a lot of wise coaching and facilitating from our academies, from our teachers to realize that. But I have a very strong belief, and the first experiences in Plata are very promising, that the learning outcomes of such kind of projects are very high for the students themselves.
I'm sure Martin has to say something about this. Yes, of
If
course, I would have given you the word.
Yeah, I'm happy to elaborate on that, because you're absolutely right, Leo, that this is a methodology. It's a methodological approach that should be consciously developed within the universities and among or between universities when it comes to international cooperation. Yes, it is so, and this is what we could experience with this very unexpected and randomly happening series of performances that we call the Free Republic of Learning, which takes place now in Budapest for more than 70 days now. Actually, it has finished, or it finished yesterday because of the pandemic regulations. Students were forced to leave the building, so the physical blockade of the building and this very impressive outreach program that they've been developing for more than 2 months now, it's temporarily over, and it all moves again on the digital era, and we will see what it will what kind of results it will give. But while it was possible to be in the physical space and in an absolutely extracurricular setting, they could meet each other and work with each other more intensively and more cross-disciplinary than it could have been ever planned consciously by the departments and by any kind of festival setting or internal project weeks or whatsoever that we experienced so far. The results are just mind-blowing. I can say and it's not just mind-blowing for the citizens of the university, but it's also such for the general audience, and the lessons go far beyond the actual walls of the institutions. It penetrates deeply the conscious of the whole society, which follows closely what is going on in that kind of free republic of learning. And this freedom is really crucial in times where, for different reasons, actually spaces are closing down, as Beata rightfully said. And this is on the one hand a fact that we have to deal with, but on the other hand, these are manipulated moves from certain political tendencies that we have to be aware of and have to seriously counter. And that's why this whole experience of our students is so important, and maybe can also show as an example, because as in the research processes in general, you try, and by chance somehow sometimes you find a good solution, which then will be methodologically observed and scientifically elaborated. So that's why I'm happy to be here and to report about that. Yes, we started our school year unexpectedly in a very X-like situation which never happened before, but the results are absolutely going on that direction that you are also mentioning, Leo, and which in a happy time should be somehow reinstalled and inbuilt in the formal educational philosophy and setting. And yes, Beata, you are very right, and Regina also, that it can only happen if performance and reflection are present at the same time, and the results of the reflective process are clearly communicated in different channels, because these things like cooperation and outreach doesn't happen just by itself. It has to be prepared and have to be enacted and explain that yes, we are doing that and we do that in purpose. So if I may just to a 1 minute long clip, if Juno, you can show a very again a very powerful example of that, how the idea of the solidarity reaching out to 5 countryside universities in Hungary was prepared by our students and enacted in the form of a ultramarathon course, which started from our building and reached out to 5 different university cities where local university students waited for the flame of autonomy and celebrated it. So just 1 minute.
Okay, thank you very much for this impressive example of what your students are inventing on their strike, and they're really like infecting many other groups, no? Who it's like we know this from historical examples that the arts, very often the arts, start to start to make a political protest with their means and their facilities in order to wake up the country, or in order to formulate the autonomy of not only of the arts, but of human beings. And if I understood rightly, for all those who are watching us and didn't follow very closely the events in Budapest, it's all about not being sacked by economy and by private consortiums taking over for public resources. You know, we're all used that universities, hospitals, and all these things are public goods, and now they turn into private economies. And universities should be the last, should really be the last to do this, or we should have public universities, not only private ones. I'm going back to what you said. You all said before this torch run. We were talking about changing something in our way to teach. I mean, ultimately, we will have to speak in this session about why should there be any European action in this field? Why don't universities do themselves what they find necessary to do on the national and international cooperation level? But the first thing I want to stress is that this has to do with freeing the curriculum. In our times, to do less and leave more space and take input out to get some more space is a very unusual thing to do. And universities, especially since Bologna, are under the stress of giving input to their students and not let this kind of free development happen. Do you have a vision on how this could work? I know in Plata you tried it, but we are talking about not only a short-term experiment, but we're talking about something substantial, which should change in arts universities in times to come, no?
Yes, maybe I can try. But I do think free the curriculum is important to make space for more autonomous learning by student collectives. But that's not an easy way to do. It takes it's a long-term policy. You have to build up together with your staff at the universities, at the theatre academies. So it's not. It's a matter of building up confidence with a curriculum that is not completely explicit, filled with materials, lessons, training programs we know about already. So you have to open up to experiment we don't know about already what will come out. And that is necessary as well, that it takes quite a lot of a period of times to do so step by step, you know, because you don't want to lose those things that have proven quality, you know, and that's what you mentioned already, Regina. We are all more or less proud about the quality of our alumni, who have a brilliant, well, lots of them, brilliant performances in the professional practice, you know. So we are more or less very close connect to our nation-wide professional practice. So on that level, we have to show some courage to open up the highway from educational system to the professional practice, which is known and more or less defined. And you have to take courage together with the students to step aside, to go a more autonomous way, and to find out maybe the theater of tomorrow, future theater. So that's looks like somehow even a danger for the future of your students, because they also want to come into the system, we all know, theater, the movies, television, and we all wish them to become more successful in their profession with their beloved ambition. They work very hard for that. So it's not an easy thing, something like, yeah, you have to skip 30% of your curriculum and you can do that if you want to. No, it's a very a precious thing to do. And I think you should take time for that, do it step by step. But you only can do that if you have the interest of the students themselves, because otherwise we should make the same, install the same system again, that we as the management, as the policymakers of theatre education decide that we should do so. No, we should do that together with the students and find their interest in these so-called open area and to step aside.
But that's one, Beata, I know I give you the word in a second. It's just, Leo, what you say stresses the necessity to make experiments you don't know the outcome of. And to do this not only in your country. I'm always have an eye on the European level, because there is not a better way to reflect on yourself or feel, resources you have, treasures you have, than meeting the other, and the outcome is not clear at all. And we have to, of course, we have to realize that other than in other sciences or in studies, students of performing arts are at the same time creators and the instrument and the materials they create with. This is true for actors, but also for musicians and for all the others. So this would be a possibility to free the curriculum, because you are doing it together with others, which, because they are the others, bring in some new aspects and keep you from knowing beforehand what you want to achieve, if I may put it this technically. Beata, please forgive me for going in.
No, of course, because it's a vivid discussion. So it's it's difficult to add something to what you said, Leo, because I think that you just said what I would like to say. What I would like to add is that when I'm thinking about, because we have this tool as Erasmus is, and the students, of course, are using this tool, and even this we are trying to have some joint master degrees, but my thing is that Erasmus is not enough for artists, because 1 or 2 semesters or 2 semesters of exchange is not enough. It's not sufficient for them to really have this self-development, as we are thinking about young artists who are looking for their own way, and who are also looking for their own research. And this is what we also don't have enough space in our curricula to allow them to make their own research and to explore their own fields, because we are all the time thinking about competences, skills, and social skills they should have from our curricula, which are really structured. My guess is, and my think is, that even the festivals is not enough, because the festival, as my experience is, when we organize itself festival, and we really wanted all the groups to be together for 1 week, and we were organizing funds for this, that the students are here for 1 week, for a full week, and they can see each other, and they can talk about talk together, and maybe construct collaboration. As far as I know, it didn't happen so far. So this week is not enough. They can see each other, they can discuss about it, but then they are going to their own worlds and are doing the same as they did, more or less. When I was thinking about this, what is clear for me, that as Erasmus is a stable program and it's a stable structure, long-lasting, as we know how it works, it would be good to find a long-lasting, with long perspective program for artists, performing artists, which are also stable and where they have, apart from what you said, Leo, this free the curricula, they have a stable conditions for making the research and really looking for what you said, the results we don't know. I have maybe one example, which is maybe quite close to it. One of our students, of my student, former student, and I will even tell this is Alicja Borkowska, which is important. When she was a student of theater department in Warsaw, she asked me to go to Bologna University within the Erasmus program. So she spent one semester there and then asked for another one and spent 1 year there. And then she decided to stay in Bologna. And she was there for 5 years. And she came back in 2012. And then she was working with refugees and immigrants. And she saw this Lampedusa crisis herself and everything. And she was developing this program and she was developing her professional tools on this field of research. That was her field of research. When she came back to Poland, she started to work on this field of research in Poland, which is absolutely something marginal, let's say, and nobody was talking widely about immigrant crisis, which came 3 years later. And then I saw that her research she made, just one individual artist, and then she came to Poland and made a big, I would say, a big discussion about it. And now she's one of the experts on this field here in Poland, and she's adapting all those tools here for our issues concerning the immigrants. So that's sometimes it's very individual, and we have to agree with this, that it won't be for everyone. It should be for individuals, but those individuals might create something bigger later.
And if I may add, theatre and performing arts is always about sharing experience to a third, to an audience. So this is why this is, maybe it's silly to say because all of us were attending these 3 days, but we tend to forget about it, that we are sort of like the basic transformation tool of experience and of empathy ever, whatever we do. Yeah. Thank you, Beate, because the experiences we all have, I believe, and this is why we are thinking so hard about developing openings and collaborations on the long term. The students won't get the idea themselves while they are packed into our curricula. And many of them also during EUTSA meetings said, give us the spark and then we can go on. But you have to give us the spark, the inspiring spark, the one experience of coming together and doing something we would have never experienced before. The one guy said it in the Odyssey video, Leo, we heard about it. Never done anything like this. What is this? This is very strange. And then they will connect and then it will go on. But it's our responsibility to really do so and do it not as an add-on. That's my point. Mate, I'm sure you're longing to say something. You have been silent for a long while.
I was just checking. Someone wanted to intervene from the attendees. I don't know if it. I just saw a hand raised, but maybe it's over.
No, that's somebody. Sometimes you see things we can't see, and they belong to another session. If there are questions, they would give it to me on via WhatsApp, or the attendees would just walk into our session, I believe. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm a bit, even a bit more critical on the institutional responsibility of all that, because our institutions, which are, of course, very much rooted in the tradition and seeking for the highest quality of outputs, created a sort of structure which is very self-sufficient, I would say, and self-sufficient from an artistic and pedagogical point of view. And it's already a good case if these two point of views are organically merged. But then, yes, the question: where is the room for the inspiration or for the aspirations of those youngsters who are somehow becoming younger and younger, and I mean even more different by education, by social background, by experiences in the digital and non-digital world. So I think that there is an increasing gap between what an institution rooted in the tradition might offer, even with the best intentions, and the reality, the experience, and the aspirations of young people coming into those institutions. But therefore, I think it's really crucial to re-evaluate our routines and find ways to give more place for those people, and therefore it's also, I think, quite important, and it's also the responsibility of the institutions to realize the context and to acknowledge those potential partners and platforms of learning which are around but which are not institutionalized. And I think it's also it can be a good way to somehow emancipate those existing circles, artistic circles, pedagogical circles, initiatives that are that work for the same purposes, but by nature, by organizational characteristics, are more adapted to host those kind of experiences, which can be, as Beata told, individual or relating to small groups of future artists without involving the whole institutional staff. And I would suggest also that these kind of inspirations, which are manifold, so we all know a bunch of good practices of that kind in our respective fields, should be also recognized on the European level. And I always have the feeling when big institutions work together or try to work together, these are like big elephants trying to share the space in the zoo and not to hurt each other. And I think that we also should allow the European framework of cooperation should be more multi-layered and should offer substantial cooperation between partners coming from different sectors, like the civil sector, the youth sector, the cultural sector, the social sector, and promote cooperation among them and with existing universities who have definitely the biggest resources and background for that.
Thank you very much for this, Mate. I must correct myself. It was Barbara Gessler who was trying to send us a message in the Q&A session. Sorry, Barbara. It was hidden behind some kind of thing I don't need. Barbara Gessler wrote, before Mate spoke, we have an individual mobility tool at EU level, iPortunus, that is for culture professionals. And we are in the process of setting up a circulation of performing arts platform next to Erasmus. But Erasmus remains the go-to instruments for students. Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing this with us, Barbara. We are hopefully looking for all the new ideas and inventions you are continuously working on and always proposing new things. Yes, we have no questions. Either we are alone in the spheres, or people are just, which I think people are just listening to what we have to say, because we are not really quarreling about, no other questions, about anything, but rather expanding what we have experienced and talk about our professions. I would like to suggest that we share a couple of ideas we might have for the future of our institutions. Mate, you were already close to sketching like co-works between institutionalized and non-institutionalized entities, if I understood you right. Maybe one of you two, Leo or Beata, want to propose things?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Well, maybe it's a good thing, and I don't know, Mate, if it's aligned with your idea, but we should think and maybe propose something like 2 or 3 international production houses for graduated students who have the possibility to come together in international co-production platforms to find out their way for maybe a new kind of theater for the future, and maybe also, which is as important as well, Regina, you mentioned that, to connect with audiences, maybe new audiences also, who are not so much in the theater at the moment. For instance, youngsters, we really need, we're looking for. So I would suggest, why couldn't we arrange all together and supported by the EU such kind of production houses in the Netherlands? We had in the decades before good experiences with that, and that is especially not for those who are on the academies, but in the first period after graduating, and it's also a way for bridging the gap that is often mentioned after our educational programs to professional life, to arrange a couple of those more or less experimental collective groups on the basis of international co-creating, supported by national and EU funds. And in my opinion, that they should be connected at least with professional partners in the fields, theaters, theater companies, or maybe also in the background, we as educational partners to support him, to surround him, because it's not, well, it's to make theater, to bring it in society is a profession itself. So some guidance and connection with experienced people who are engaged with the idea is important, I think. What do you think about such an idea?
Who wants to answer? I'm afraid Barbara Gessler has left us. Would she? I would have liked to hear what she says about it.
Yeah,
She'd probably say that there are programs you can use for this kind of postgraduate work, as we all know. So maybe this is up to us to install and really get it going. Or what do you think?
It really reminds me to the French structure. They have this Jeune Théâtre National, which invites automatically all the graduates from the different acting schools of France and provide them with a sort of safe place for 1 or 2 years, and also works as a sort of agency in the best sense of the term, which helps young people to connect with the profession, with the diverse network of theaters, and also not only paves the way towards their engagement in those structures, but also contributes financially. So it's a very useful hub where all the alumni of actors or acting schools can meet up. So I think it's a very inspiring example that can be extended on a European level. And with the very good Dutch reference of the production houses, also I think it's important to give resources for creation for people who would be virtually, not only virtually but physically also part of this network. Yeah, I'm afraid that someone from the EU would say that go for the Creative Europe and try to get money from that. And this was also one of my problems, which we all know that this only program that was referenced at the opening speech as well as the only existing platform for co-financing at the European level is already highly competitive. So what I witnessed the past few years or decades that the chances for newcomers are constantly decreasing. And I think that for the educational purposes, some kind of fast line or some kind of priority seating would be necessary, because there's more at stake than just yet another interesting pan-European cultural project. But it's really about how those who were trained for becoming the new generation of artists throughout the country can experience and co-create new ways of productions and reflections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's Beata. You want to say something, right?
Just say what you wanted to say, and then I will.
I couldn't interpret your finger. I think this is one of the main things why I just wanted to make clear that all of us who are sitting here know very well about the very diverse landscape of fundings provided by the EU. So it's not a matter of just say we want one more, we want one more. It really is a structural thing. We start to really talk about in all our associations we are and in our networks. And it's not solved yet, because the problem of or the idea of postgraduate collaboration could be a very, very valuable one to establish and enhance European co-working, because we are always talking about who gives like a helping hand to start this and get the big elephants, also the small ones, but also the big elephants. To move and to think about possibilities of hosting, of giving venues, of opening up to this idea, and maybe link it to maybe all ETC theaters who are listening to us now. Say, think who can host postgraduate work up to 3 years after they finish studies, and you will have something which is normal in medicine. You study medicine and then you go to the hospital and work there, and it's still part of your academic career. And we badly need something like this. Yeah, Beata.
At first, I would like to say that in our Q&A there is a note from Kasia.
Yes, I just saw it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and going backwards to our former discussion is and about this place for postgraduates. This is what we also were discussing a few times during our Pleta meetings, because we knew that there are artists or young artists who just graduated the studies who would like to develop, but the academy cannot get a responsibility for them anymore, because we are just having students and are not taking care about postgraduates. So that's the first idea, and it's very important, and that would be crucial to make it. But still, we have to go back this one step lower and think about higher educational institutions like academies or universities, because if we will not prepare students to think about it, they will not get. And they will not go and they will not use this instrument. We still need to work here and find some solutions to encourage them to try to make this research, because, well, they will just finish and they will go to the market they know.
Absolutely, and we will have to go back to this idea and elaborate it a little bit more. I just wanted to share with everyone what Kasia wrote. She wrote, "It's great, thank you so much. Very empowering to hear about the importance of experiments we don't know the outcomes of. I wonder how much for future we should experiment with multilingual theater making." Now, this is a very important keyword. We didn't speak about it yet because it's a big domain everybody is trying to work in, and the theaters are more and more interested in productions that really use this multi-ethnic, multinational, and multilingual stories they tell, because that's our reality and it should be reflected on stage. So we better think about training, just simply training students in multilinguality, because it will be part of the market. If I just speak of this section, yeah. Leo, did you want to add something, or Mate, to what Beata rightfully said?
Yeah, sure. Sure, because Beate, you're very right. If we don't prepare our students during our programs at the academies, they won't go for an international experiment afterwards, because it's a hard way to become an actor or director only in the national market. You know, it's not an easy way. So for them, it's also something like, yes, it's interesting to go abroad and to step in a multilingual experiment. But if I can choose between an internship with a big theater company and such a project, maybe I better go for the internship and well, see if I can give such a pathway better opportunities for me to become a good actor, you know, and to get a place in the market. So, in my opinion, there's a connection between the work we do in the curriculum and the opportunities we should create afterwards, because that creates also a perspective for them during the training programs and the academic programs to make a further step in their first professional period, to step in such a multilingual, multicultural production house, something like that. And yes, language is a problem. So we can deny that. To make beautiful theater based on dramatic literature, language is very important. But if you jump over that barrier and you want to make theater about personal and societal issues that are very actual, and you do that with a company that is multicultural from itself, you have to step into another kind of theater, which is multilingual, multidisciplined, more or less. Yeah? You will use other theatrical idiom. And we discovered, like we did with the Purich project, we developed in Salzburg, in the Plato program, that mixing all those languages works fabulous in the communication, even with the audience, you know. So there are lots of opportunities we should discover much more and further than those we are so familiar with and who are so close connected to the high standard of dramatic theater based on literature, dramatic literature.
Exactly, that's the aspect of theater is not only text on legs, but has so many different forms, as has been pointed out on several occasions already this morning. I just look into the chat. From Kasha, it's also about an idea of failure as a creative opportunity, isn't it? Kasha is still with the outcome you do not know about, no? Do I interpret this right, Berta? It's also about an idea of failure as a creative opportunity, is it? Multilingual, yes. Yes, exactly.
Well,
exactly.
we always say in our academy that the academy is an idea of a failure as a creative opportunity, because here you are safe and you can make a mistake, and well, that's the place to make mistake.
Okay, I'm just.
Yeah, I really wonder about this language issue, because of course we hear it very often that using English as a lingua franca, it's in itself quite a limitation for most of us, for whom is not the native language. And still, now we are sitting in a panel where with 4 different mother tongues and trying to express ourselves in English, which makes us, which also becomes a sort of limitations because we are using a toolkit which has been, somehow appropriated, but not we are not in full possession of that. So it's even more relevant when it comes to an educational setting, and therefore I also would emphasize, and thinking about what Kasia raises, that first of all, it's not what kind of language we use to express ourselves on the verbal aspect, but it's also what do we seek for expressing. And I think that the learning of the language, the learning of the background of the language is even more important. And this is what should institutions prepare young people for. And this is also what new platforms should be proposed for them to experience it by themselves. Because when you move to another country, of course, there might be the language barrier, but it's also that the topics, the social context, the themes, the codes, the behavioral aspects are much more mysterious than the language itself. And in order to discover deeply and intimately those phenomena, which then should be somehow expressed by artistic means, and language is just one of these means, is vital. And I think that the real challenge is what kind of platforms are there for young people to really dive into those kind of learning situations in contexts which are, of course, on a European level, we like to say that we all are connected in our culture, but in fact, in the reality, the realities are very, very diverse. And when for an artist to really understand it should be a very deep experience, and also for young people who has a previous experience through the media. I think it's sometimes, and it's also my experience with students, when you go there and when you meet people and when you work with them, it's shocking. It's shocking just the difference between the images that they've been preparing for themselves and the reality that they are encountering on the spot.
Maybe I have a question from Sana. I don't know how to pronounce. Sana Stier Grundmain from who's watching us on live stream, which is a little connected to this. She asks, how would you imagine an integrated / an equal selection process of practitioners to be able to work in those type of organizations as mentioned, European co-production houses? If I understand this right, it's asking for who has access to this, no? Or how do you mix it? Or how would you select it? Right or not right? Would anybody like to answer? Well, how do we imagine it is the access to these production houses?
We think about not students, but about the lecturers or the supervisors. Yeah.
I'm not quite sure. She says practitioners.
Okay. Because the question about, of course, the question is one we didn't, or I don't have it in my mind now. Is this production house only for those who are using it as a production house, or do we have an artistic supervision on this, and there is someone who is looking at it and maybe making some corrections or reflection, which is needed all the time? Yeah, so that's one thing. Well, my guess might be that well, it should be some kind of how to say, interview, let's say, and sharing the program or presenting the program of an artist who would like to, what kind of research would he like to or she develop. But this is a good point about thinking, is this production house only a house for production or also a place where we do a reflection on it, and who is supervising it?
Sani said in between, yes, right. So we interpreted her question right, if I interpret her yes, right, and gave a hint to a possible answer. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Beata. I'd like to do, maybe we have to speak about two models we have in our minds, which have to do with international co-working, also on the EU level. Was it again to this question, Leo? Because otherwise I would.
I only wanted to adjust to Beata that we have also experience in Plato with this selection thing. So it's very important that those who are interested apply themselves, that there is a kind of artistic advisement who can select those who apply on their motivation and their own initiatives and ideas about the framework for such a project. And I do agree very much. It's not this kind of production house. It's not production. It's not only focused on production. It's very much focused on the combination of development, research, and production, and find and create new connections with audiences. Because what kind of production house it will be, and I very much hope it will be international. So at least you want to bring in 4, 5, 6 different backgrounds in such a group, but maybe better 8, like we did with Plato, because that was a rule also. At least from every academy, 1 should participate. So that's very important to make such very basic lines. But then again, if you want to work with such kind of models, you have to create also free space in the field of European funding, and then at the moment, if you apply at the European funds, you have to be very specific about the outcomes of your project, even the output, and how that will be installed in the profession, etc., etc. And well, I can imagine that there are good reasons to do so, but we now need some more space in those regulations of the EU funds for these kinds of experiments and international co-creation. And I would say be needed now, like the title of our workshop is.
Before I pass the word on to Mate, who is busy developing a very specific idea linked to the situation in Budapest, I would like to leave my role as moderator for a moment and just report from one topic, apart from the postgraduate work we are busy with in the EUCA among our 18 members. And that's the idea of something like a European theatre master. I'm going back to the idea of free the curriculum and put things in there which are necessarily linked to the studies, or can be linked if you wish, in a master program. So make your artisanal work. And then it would be great if we could develop with a couple of universities a model of really mixing curricula, not only in the way that students can, as other sciences can, go abroad and take courses in this or that university. You can already do this, but that you can choose a formation on your master program where you have to co-create with other students in other universities. Let it be the 3 countries you always need for this. That you study there, you work there, you establish a project, and you show a project which is in which at least three nations, 3 other countries, students are participating, and this will be your master work. And this is something you will not, as far as I can see it, you will not get done from the universities. We won't be, if I speak of my university, even if they are willing to, they will neither have the money nor the facilities to say, we just establish a kind of test master for a couple of years together with other universities, because the means are just used up and will be used up even more after lockdown. So I'm afraid all these plans will rather go down than come up, because we already have the first cuts announced in our university. So this would be something, if we could like make a, I don't know, make a kind of initiative group for a European theatre master, and ask universities to join and develop this. This would be a real great help, because again, it's a spark. It starts somewhere, you can evaluate it, and then maybe others will join in, and we really create a new form of curriculum for our practitioners, for our young future artists. This is something I would very much like to drop and emphasize, and maybe go on talking about this with some of the policymakers, because we really strongly believe in the value of an idea like this. That was my content part from the EUZA. And Mate, would you like to say something about the idea you develop in Budapest right now?
Yeah, thank you. And you're absolutely right, Regina, that we are facing difficult times, but I also would hope and claim that this whole recovery process that we are also ahead, and in which arts and education should play a vital role, not only because it was very badly affected by all these restrictions, but also because we will enter, and we have to enter into a healing process. Where lots of bounds should be treated carefully, and in that perspective, arts and culture and education is really a very, very important tool. So I also would like to see this upcoming period as a chance to really come up with meaningful ideas and get funds for that from the huge EU budgets which were announced earlier, and I know that those kind of European projects and international cooperations between big institutions, it always takes time, and it's always meticulously prepared, and these are long-term processes. But exactly because we are going through different crises, this is also an opportunity for us to think and act quickly, and use these accidents, or use these unprecedented moments as a source of inspiration, and also building up quick structures which sometimes are more resistant than those which were premeditated for a long time. So yes, we are in Budapest in a full crisis situation. We are facing a moment when the new leadership, the new ownership of the university announced that basically they closed down the university, and they don't acknowledge the current educational scheme. So even this semester is invalid for everyone who is in the university, and they will open from 1st of February new places of learning with new teaching staff, and students and teachers will called one by one to say whether they would like to join and acknowledge the new setup or not. And you can imagine that for the hundreds of teachers and students who have been protesting so harshly, this is really not an option. So they found themselves in a situation where for February and for the next school year, they have to find an alternative solution. And what can be an alternative solution? Of course, we can move out and meet in different places and keep on working together. So the professional development in a way could be assured, but by the end of the day there will be no diploma for sure, because we cannot distribute diploma without the state recognition. And that's how the international solidarity, which is not only a gesture but a concrete, which can translate it into concrete terms, come into the picture. Because in Hungary for the coming years, if you don't want to cope with that kind of institution which is clearly taken over by the politics, and there is no alternative ways. We have a monopole situation in Hungary, so only one theater school exists. So the choice is very clear for young generations. Either they cope with that structure, or they try to go somewhere else abroad. So what we would propose that the international community should somehow come into the country and create a new framework of a sort of international European University of Performing Arts with a special affiliate in Budapest, in which Hungarian students and teachers can keep on working along with international peers, because Budapest is, of course, a fantastic place to study at and live at, and it's really at the center of the continent. So why not use it in a positive way? But it would need a sort of administrative umbrella which is developed by those entities who are able and capable to do so. And if the EU as such is too big and too slow to move in that direction, I think that the responsibility may lay with the institutions themselves, and they should explore among themselves and together with us whether there is any kind of possibility to set up that kind of network, and whether this network can then successfully apply for additional funds on the European level. But this is really the only chance. If it doesn't happen, and that's why we are working so hard with Christoph, who is in this panel from Salzburg, and some other colleagues, whether we can do something very quickly, because if it doesn't happen, it's just over, and this whole situation is shrinking, and there just will be one lesson on all that you will have a new University of Theatre of Film Arts with the old name, but with a truly new content, and I would just warn to be very cautious entering into any kind of international cooperation with them.
Thank you very much, Mate. This is like on the one hand it sounds like utopia, because you have the vision of just moving out into the empty Soros building with the EuGH, the European courts, said that it was illegal to empty this university. But on the other hand, you see that solidarity action can be very fast, even with the elephants, because the people who are moving at the moment, including my university and others, and all EUCA universities, and calling and saying, do you need help? Can we check the curricula? Can we give diploma? How can we give diploma to your students? Of course, in an absolutely legal way, as you do it in Erasmus contexts, checking the ETCS points and all this. So it can be done quickly if the necessity is there. So I think Budapest at the moment is a very good example for, as well, do another curricula as you're used to, and look for a kind of international university of performing arts, which can be set up provisionally, but it can be set up if everybody agrees to invest into it and put their logistics and their teachers and their facilities in there. It can be done. It's not that far away, and I hope we are going to prove also as a community of theatre schools that this is a possibility to go, and I really see it. Yeah. Anybody who wants to? Yes, Beata, please.
So it's still about preparing our students to make this international relations, because it may happen, our reaction as we are here and our universities is because we are working together in EUCA, in Plata, and we have these relations. Without those relations would not be this discussion and finding any issues and any solvings for Budapest situation and students. So that's why still we have to go back and really enhancing this international relations between students and academies.
Beata, this was the best closing word I could imagine for our panel. We have another 3 minutes left. Mate, you breathed. You wanted to say something on top? No, it's fine. Because then I would like to close this session. I'm just looking briefly if there is anything from the. Excuse me, I'm just not used to doing it like this. It's my first. No questions. Thank you very much, Alice. I'm really dependent on these tools. Okay, could have gone worse. I'm closing, but I want to say to everybody who's still watching and listening that for the forum, if you want to continue discussions with us who are here, and I'm talking to the forum guest list participants who are currently with us, you're welcome to continue this discussion in the platform, on the stage, within the auditorium later on. There you have an opportunity to meet and talk face to face about the topic we've been discussing this morning. But first, we invite you all to go to the feedback plenary, where you can hear what has been discussed in the two other panels parallel to our session on the working conditions of artists and on the accessibility and diversity of the performing arts. Thank you very much and see you later. We go into a short break.